presented as one of the main achievements of the agents of power at that time. Then, by the end of 2004, after elections, the Alliance Justice and Truth, Dreptate și Adevăr, took over. The proper contributions and work to the highway stopped. Representatives of the new power accusing actually some irregularities of the contract, restarting negotiations with Bechtel. All activities related to the highway construction had been postponed, and actually for about a year all the work stopped. Unfortunately, all these things proved to be excerpts of a demagogical discourse, the new negotiations taking place in the context of a clear real estate boom that had as consequences a price increase of construction materials, land and labor forces. These decisions and approaches determined a long postponement of the entire project. The initial deadline, 2012, is actually impossible to be respected. Okay, now I'm going to come up with some details, some data related to the place where I carried out, where I conducted fieldwork. So, Săvădisla, and I'm going to refer mainly to the recent history of the place. Săvădisla, the place where I have conducted fieldwork, is situated in the southwestern part of Cluj. More specifically, the distance Săvădisla-Cluj comprises 22 kilometers, and serves as the administrative center of 8 villages in the area. Mainly it is a Hungarian village, so the population is about 80% of Hungarians, and the place in itself is located at the border of 3 important ethnographic areas: Călata, Apuseni Mountains, the so-called Mocănime, and Arieș. According to Hungarian ethnographic literature, it belongs to Călata region, together with Duna de Sus, Liten, and Vlaha. In other references, it is placed in the sub-area of Finișel Valley. As in the big majority of Călata region places, the population is historically known as one of servants, Iobaj, and confessionally, they are Protestants, Reformed. Major developments in the economic status of the inhabitants are reported in the 20th century. The male population working as carpenters and builders, especially in Cluj, but not exclusively. This continued constantly and was an invariant, even in the communist period, in terms of forced collectivization and industrialization. Specifically, part of the male population contributed to several industrial building projects and to house buildings, determining it to stay very close to the urban environments and to working class. These exposures have had, as consequences, the adopting of urban cultural patterns in a way. Some of them present quite early in the life of the village. Meanwhile, female population has been traditionally in contact with urban environments, many of them working as housekeepers at different bourgeois families and institutions of Catholic Church, especially in Cluj. The urban environment influence is very much internalized and mostly exposed consciously. At the beginning of the 20th century, mainly there are cultural associations, a choir, theatre troupe founded in the village. After the Vienna Dictat, the border between Romania and Hungary separated 2 neighbor villages, the first one being incorporated in Hungary, while Vlaha and Săvădisla became part of Romania. So it was the borderline established put there, which is quite relevant for Săvădisla. As an immediate follow-up, a big part of the young generation migrated to Hungary, mainly to Cluj, Kolozsvár. Even closer relations to the urban settlement started. Women became permanently employed as housekeepers, or in the industrial sector, men continued their work traditions as builders and carpenters, some of them fully employed in Cluj. After war, during the communist regime, especially in the 70s, part of Săvădisla male population being still involved in the same type of work, performed with success, devotion and notoriety, left home and worked for a few years in different Arabic countries and some West European ones. With the process of industrialization, women full employment in industrial field intensified. This period they commuted daily to Cluj. After 1989-1990, domestic life continued as previously on certain levels. House building and woodwork proved invariably adopted. Villagers being employed in Cluj and other areas, earning well, especially during days of construction boom. Some of them, as temporary migrants, work in the same branches in Hungary, Austria, and Germany. Economically, the village developed quite well post-1989 compared to other settlements. Even in the same area, new phenomena, small-scale rural tourism, agriculture, temporary or permanent migration to Hungary, and more recently to Italy, ensure a certain economic prosperity to the village inhabitants. So, in very general terms, this is the history of the place where, again, I conducted fieldwork. And I started to conduct fieldwork over there in 2008, being part at that time of a research team coordinated by the Ethnographic Museum of Transylvania. Then I continued to carry out fieldwork on my own, so on a very individual basis, let's say. Well, I'm going to offer you details related to the fieldwork I've carried out over there. After basic orientation in the field, noticing the general turbulence in the village, I have tried to see if this external objective fact is also present in the informant's narratives. How it is articulated, to which extent, what meanings does it have for them, and mostly if the process of highway construction constitutes a sort of ritual of passage for the community members. Is this moment changing fundamentally their cultural habits, daily life? Is their social imagery so much challenged, or on the contrary, the external intervention does help to strengthen current social ties, cultural traits, and so on? This interrogation came in the early stage of my research, and to certain extent I did efforts to respond to it using the interviews as a sort of golden source. Well, indeed, the moment of the highway construction seemed to be relevant, a relevant one for inhabitants, being present in almost all and all types of interviews I did. Semi-structured interviews, life histories, and so on and so forth. Mostly in the sense that this process puts an end of a very calm, regular, peaceful atmosphere and also way of life. At least this could be the conclusion of the interviews done in 2008-2009. In the next excerpt, I present the most recurrent issues of the interviews. They reflect different layers on which social, cultural realities are constructed, reconstructed, reconfigured, sometimes and also represented and reflected in the and by the insiders' narratives. They are also relevant in what concerns perspectives on this new intrusive element, the highway. One of the most present elements is the land situation there. It is a very peculiar phenomenon, as at least in Săvădisla, land and agriculture played a very secondary role in the life of community. Despite the promised land expropriation, its postponement, and the final not advantageous prices offered to the inhabitants for their properties caused dissatisfactions, worries, arguments. We have spoken with a few representatives of several local institutions, meanwhile natives of Săvădisla. Their opinions have determined our understanding. then the land expropriation started. We were, I'm quoting here of course, we were one of the first families where it was expropriated, but the less paid one was our area. They told that our land is at 5. Our area was so poor. They gave between 2 and 5 euros per square meter. And another relevant quotation. They paid quite well in the beginning, but afterwards money vanished. Bechtel was entering. It needed land to work. People saw it enter their land, but they did not get any money yet. We have so many troubles, another quotation. They want to put a bridge there. They've started and our fountains, water is vanishing, unquote. At this level, the highway project is perceived, of course, as a very threatening one, as threatening values and goods. Land and houses are the most present material values in the interviews. A hostile one, disturbing traditional norms, distorting the meaning and the meanings of individual family properties, internalized through complex historical and cultural processes. The response is given spontaneously. The result is an obvious strengthening of the sense of property at all levels. At least these are the findings from the interviews, and this is really kind of recurrent in the narratives I got. Obviously, the external intervention is a coagulation factor. For the community members, the empirical evidence profiles this interpretive scheme. The social solidarity deepens, the big majority of villagers having to face the same problems. Many of them have old family inherited houses, much affected by the process of construction. Daily loaded trucks cross the village. The roads are not so resistant. The immediate result is that houses have cracked walls and are certainly damaged in their basic structures. Lands are, meanwhile, in an uncertain status. The traditional community establishment is challenged, and these are all causing an intensive, deep, and very much exposed solidarity. But not only the threatening of material goods, either private or communitarian, should be mentioned in this context. There are many other stages reflecting the community culture imagery or imaginary, focusing on the fact that the external intervention of a highway construction, disturbing for a while all scapes, ends up to stress the individual feeling of belonging to the community, playing the role of a deep cultural linkage, I would say, factor. The ways in which ethnicities are continuing to face one another are very interesting. The interviews, especially life histories, reflect that old ethnic stereotypes are still perpetuated. The main traditional ethnic belongings are divided in 3: Hungarian, Romanian and Roma people. Due to a past quite full of conflicts and symbolic tensions between Hungarians and Romanians, a situation reproducing at the micro-level Transylvanian history, the ethnic imagery of the community members is loaded with negative stereotypes. These are present in the narratives I have gathered when conducting fieldwork. One of my informants, describing her temporary migration experience in Hungary, is saying, I'm quoting here, "I had to stay 2 months in Hungary. I say it is better to eat only onion and a bit of salt, and if I do not have salt, I eat onion without it, not to stay in Hungary. I was there more than here and I was still hungry," unquote. There are also narratives on ways of spatial marginalization, the central part of the village being mainly Hungarian. I'm quoting, "When we came here, we could have a house just by the end of the village. What do you imagine, my dear? We are here intruders," unquote. And vice versa, of course. You can get similar histories in the Hungarian community. The Roma Gypsy group is also present in the imagery of others, both Hungarians and Romanians. I'm quoting here, communists brought a family from Kozsokna and they paid them well, quite good money. And they remained here and started trade with old furniture. They gathered furniture pieces and put them in trains. They repaired them and sent them to Italy, unquote. Generally, even in new situations, the ethnic imagery related to the groups there for ages is not changed and apparently not challenged too much, even in the general disturbed landscape of the village. One can say that the old inherited perspective is still reproduced according to the same invariants, and this is impossible to be neglected. A peculiar, interesting situation is that one generated by the fact that quite recently, more or less not connected to the highway construction process, a few Italian families brought land over there in Săvădisla, in the neighborhood of the village, and built up houses obviously different in style from other village houses. They're very much observed by the natives of Săvădisla. Basically, everyone could tell different stories related to them. I'm quoting here. I do not know what is his name. I name him Mussolini. He's massive. He bought 3-4 houses and made a house for himself, like in Sicily. He has land where the collective farm in totalitarian times, of course, was the land down there. He bought it there. It was a tractor's farm there, and now he has also horses, and so on and so forth. Yeah? The Turkish workers, on the other hand, yeah, employed by Bechtel, are less noticed by the villagers, less present in their narratives. They have been physically located actually a bit out of the village, outside the perimeter of it, and this is a very well-known detail. I'm quoting, they are staying in wood huts on the hill. They are staying there all the time. What reason to come in the village, unquote. Clearly, the presence of these newcomers, some of them even only temporarily, is perceived as disturbing the communitarian basement. In general, native people do not see any potential benefit from their stay down the village. Finally, the new social realities end up at this level in strengthening, reinforcing the pre-established ties. The old ethnic imagery does not seem to be very much changed, I would say. There are also dimensions of economic life of Săvădisla that have to be mentioned in the new context, being entertained and adopting specific dynamics due to the highway construction. The restaurant and mini hotel placed in the center of the village with the native owner is very much frequented also by those involved directly in the highway project. There are stories related to some of the Bechtel employees who come down there from time to time, late evenings or even nights, having different purposes. Clearly, this main restaurant plays also in the central area of the village, plays an important role in the current life of it. One can conclude that economically, there are some changes in the village. There are families that earn much better in new circumstances, but still does not change a lot the economic hierarchy of this placement. And well, I have many other details to offer you, but actually I want to come up with the conclusions, and of course mentioning something about the follow-ups of my project. It is too early to discuss the final impact of the process of the highway construction in that region. The only 42 functional kilometers neither allow to develop well an infrastructure connected to the highway nor permit the effective use of it for the natives of Săvădisla. Interesting follow-ups are to be noticed in time when the project comes to an end. In the whole uncertain social political frame that describes nowadays Romania, it is impossible to predict when this thing is going to happen. Certainly, I consider this research in project still, so I'm kind of trying to pick up interviews to collect narratives on the impact of the highway construction on the life of the community, well, this is it basically. I have many other details to offer you related to the theoretical frame, but well, what I tried to do was actually to describe the more the fieldwork experience, I mean the empirical findings, and if you are interested in the theoretical frame, well, we can do it right now in these 10 minutes dedicated to discussions and questions and so on. So thank you, I stop here, sorry. Okay, so I'm really looking forward to hearing to your feedback and, okay.
It was quite surprising for me to hear that building a road in a highway is actually something that strengthens the, humanitarian sense of, belonging and stuff, especially because generally roads are something that could kind of open up a community and make people think about, what can be beyond. And in addition to this, I also think about the fact that people living there are also, I don't know if I should term them circulant migrants, but if they go to work to Hungary, isn't, I was wondering if the road isn't signified or as something that can actually enlarge the way in which they think of themselves as a community, because it's it's kind of puzzling to actually have a road. I mean, the construction of a road as something that closes as a closure element.
Yeah, well, it's a very interesting point, I must say. Actually, the interviews that I commented here in my paper were basically done in 2008, 2009. So the period when the process of constructing, of building up the highway was there, was on the agenda. And at that moment, clearly, the construction had this impact at the symbolic level. It strengthened the community. It somehow re-articulated the social ties, and the community was actually, I think, perceiving the process of this highway construction. People were seeing this process, as I've said, as a sort of threatening one. And this is my interpretation, actually. They reacted like that because they perceived at that time the process of the highway construction as a threatening one. Probably, and I'm, well, let's say 80% sure that the things could change in time after all is done. But actually we have to see. I mean, you cannot predict the behavior of a community. Probably in general terms, there are behaviors, social behaviors, cultural behaviors, as you mentioned, so they are more open and more kind of, tolerant, and they can negotiate new ethnicities in better terms, let's say. But at least for this moment, the things were as such, and we have enough empirical evidence for that. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, if there are some other comments or...
You talked about the highway, but you talked about more the institutions and the workers and all that. Have you considered also, to put it like this, the mobility of the highway? I mean, how the landscape, their perspective on landscape and moving around changed by the way this highway was built, and how their lives changed by interacting with a new feature in their life?
Yes, I tried to encounter all that actually, but I had to be focused also on institutions involved in the process, because at that time, they were very much involved in all these, and the community in itself perceived them in a sort of negative way, and this is why I had to consider all these. But of course, if you are interested, I'm interested, of course, to enlarge a bit, to broaden a bit the frame, and I have to consider also all these micro levels that you mentioned. So how landscape is modified, how all scapes, according to Apadurai's term, all scapes are modified, or let's say challenged if not modified, and so on and so forth. So that's it. Thank you. I'm really looking forward to hearing to your feedback, because as I've told you, I still consider this research in process. So yeah, it's all very welcome. Yeah. Okay.
One of the main research question was about how they react in this connection with from beginning from 2004, when it is established this plan to.
Yes, the main, let's say, one of them.
I've heard that it's also the oral history part,
yeah.
the narratives, the stories, and I just want to know how these come together, how these make something.
Yeah, I can explain that, so no problem. Actually, I started to work there, as I've told you previously, in 2008. So all I did started that year, so 2008. And, well, my main research question, my very, let's say, broad research question was that one. How the community is perceiving this intrusion, this, let's say, material intrusion of highway construction, of a highway building up, yeah? And how I did it in practical terms. Of course, I did interviews, different sort of interviews, and to be honest, of great help, there were these life histories I could pick up. And, well, I did also some semi-structured interviews with, let's say, less help for my work, but still I did that, and, well, I started in classical ways by carrying out participant observation, and yeah, well, this is it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
But definitely, I did not consider 2004. So I mentioned 2004 because everything started that year. I mean, the idea of this highway construction. Okay. Right. Okay. So I think.